In the last video, I talked about Poland, its ambitions and contradictions, but above all, how it has become one of the symbols of the transformation of the global arms landscape in the 21st century. Apart from the 1,000 K2 tanks, Poland had also ordered K2-39 Chunmoo multiple rocket launcher systems, K9A1 self-propelled howitzers, and FA-50 fighter jets from South Korea. Last April, Morocco also announced that it had started discussions for a strategic partnership with South Korea. These acquisitions go far beyond a simple technical upgrade. They represent a strategic turning point, revealing the impatience of Eastern Europe and other players with the slowness of traditional Western deliveries. Where American or European suppliers are bogged down by delays and bureaucratic excuses, Seoul offers a purely industrial and efficient approach. Being there at the right time, in the right place, at the right price. This cold and deliberate efficiency reveals a new era of realpolitik, where arms contracts now go hand in hand with diplomatic and economic power. Behind this Polish contract lies the shift of a long marginalized power, South Korea, from being a client of the Western system to becoming an assertive global player. Its rise to power raises the question of how a country that was once dependent has become a driving force in the reshaping of arms flows and alliances. That's what we're going to look at today. Welcome to Terra Bellum. To understand this trajectory, we need to go back to the heavy historical legacy of South Korea. For centuries, the peninsula was alternately a client state of China, occupied by Japan, and then drawn into the Cold War, with conflicts against North Korea and under American tutelage. The imprint of Japanese colonization, followed by the devastation of the Korean War and the constant anxiety of being isolated on the continent, alone against the communist world, forged a strategic culture centered on the obsession with autonomy. Since 1953, sovereignty has not been conceptualized in an abstract way, but truly experienced as a matter of national survival. Any dependence on foreign actors carries the risk of humiliation, and it is in reaction to this troubled history that Seoul has patiently built its model of emancipation, thus drastically distinguishing itself from its Japanese neighbor in its relationship with the United States. This roadmap found its driving force in a military-industrial capitalism driven by pragmatism. Under the leadership of Park Chung-hee in the 1970s, and later his successors, the state orchestrated a close alliance with major national conglomerates, including Hyundai, Hanwha, Korea Aerospace Industries, and also Kia EV Industries. These are companies that, as you might guess, don't just make cars or vacuum cleaners. This strategy aims to control the entire chain, from research and development to production, from maintenance to export, and to quickly assimilate technology transfers, whether through Western partnerships or deliberate reverse engineering. Very early on, the defense industry became the driving force behind Korean industrialization, fueled first by the need to protect against North Korea, then by an open ambition for international influence. This hybrid model of state capitalism and international openness hits the mark. The moral question of exports is secondary. Only national survival and profit matter. In 2010, South Korea timidly emerged among arms exporters, but it was at the turn of 2021-2022 that its influence literally exploded. For a long time limited to $2 to $3 billion in annual exports, a respectable level for a middle power, South Korea surpassed the $7 billion mark. Dollars in 2021 due to a surge in global demand. The following year, it was a complete success with $17.3 billion in exports, propelling Seoul into the leading pack. Even with a market slowdown, the figures remain above $13 billion, then still approach $10 billion in 2024. This data, all from SIPRI surveys and Korean reports, shows the extent of the structural shift underway. To date, South Korea accounts for 2% of the global arms market, which is an increase of nearly 5% compared to the previous period from 2015 to 2019. These exports now cover more than 20 countries, a number that is clearly increasing. In comparison, While France is considered the world's second largest exporter between 2019 and 2023, its position is increasingly being challenged and even threatened by South Korea, which is increasingly entering markets coveted by France with a much more aggressive model. Notably, a few flagship products played a central role in this breakthrough. The K2 Black Panther tank has become one of its technological flagships. Offered at $8.5 million per unit, it is capable of quickly integrating the client's specific requirements. It prevails where Western alternatives are considered too slow or dogmatic. The Polish order, for example, combined with a record delivery schedule, meaning less than 4 months for the first batch of tanks, was decisive. Seoul added to this the promise to produce more than 820 additional units locally, in close cooperation with the Polish industry. Meanwhile, nearly 700 K9 howitzers follow the same logic. Through this offer, Korea is proposing quickly accessible industrial autonomy, whereas the French, or for example the German model, often requires lengthy negotiations and a more reluctant sharing of technology in order to protect it. The K9 Thunder system, which now holds half of the global self-propelled howitzer market, continues this successful model. The FA-50 training and combat aircraft also rounds out the offering, a system that has managed to attract interest. For example, Malaysia, which awarded it the light aviation contract in 2023, ahead of Swedish and Indian bids, and it has also won over the Philippines, Poland, and Indonesia. Each of these successes follows the same recipe: competitive price, fast delivery, and an offer of local industrial collaborations that are presented as a unique package. The approach is resolutely focused on commercial and political efficiency of traditional action by major historical exporters, but also in its management of ethics. The endless debates about the legitimacy of sales to certain states, which regularly slow down French or German procedures, are not an obstacle for Seoul, as long as no international sanctions are imposed on it. This operational coldness is characteristic of contemporary realpolitik. Imposed by emerging powers, it appeals to states that do not expect to be judged, but to be served. And the number of clients keeps growing, among those who want their own arms industry or a diversification of their military apparatus. The graphs show it. Never since the Cold War has Europe felt such an urgent need to rearm. Since the Russian invasion of Ukraine in 2022, the demand for armored vehicles, artillery, and light aviation has skyrocketed. While American and European manufacturers are focused on domestic orders or bogged down by bureaucracy and cannot respond to all procurement tenders within a reasonable time frame, it is into this strategic gap that South Korea has managed to step in. Poland has signed more than 20 billion euros worth of South Korean purchases in 2 years, against the backdrop of strengthening its military capabilities, as we discussed a week ago. This is not at all a reflex of ideological solidarity, but an industrial battle carried out driven by urgency and by the search for an unprecedented balance between cost and delivery time. Beyond short-term opportunism, Seoul is betting on a strategy of logistical control. With every tank or cannon delivered comes a long-term maintenance contract, the supply of ammunition, personnel training, management of spare parts, and technical updates. In fact, these countries become tied to the Korean supply chain for years or even decades. This locks everything in and ensures that Seoul becomes an essential long-term partner, making it a serious rival for other exporting countries, a voluntary dependence that deeply shapes the country and works to Korea's advantage. It should also be noted how strategically astute Seoul is in managing its position. The proclaimed neutrality here is as much an art as it is a necessity. The country has to deal with American military oversight, constant suspicion from Beijing, rivalry with Japan, and pressure from North Korea or Russia, all while multiplying its contracts. This agility is not without risk. A misstep, a coalition shift, or an unexpected sanction could expose the Korean model, leaving it quite isolated. But for now, this guarantees it a central place within the global arms trade, as you can see on this graph, which excludes the United States, the leading arms exporter, but shows the meteoric rise of South Korea, a growth it will need to sustain and amplify. France, traditionally the second or third largest exporter in the world, is losing ground. Once considered the only significant alternative to the United States and the USSR, Paris is now losing many of its strategic contracts in Eastern Europe, the Gulf, and Southeast Asia. In Poland, the entire market for replacing artillery and light fighter aircraft was taken by Seoul, at the expense of the Caesar systems and Rafale. The same happened in Malaysia and the Philippines, where the Korean FA-50s have replaced the French or American alternatives. The speed of decision-making, the integration of industrial transfers, and local offsets are game changers. Where Paris or Berlin impose their own standards and restrictions, Korea offers a pragmatic package, appealing to emerging countries eager for greater autonomy on land, in a multipolar world that forgives nothing. Even though France remains a major player, as proven by the order of 80 Rafales by the United Arab Emirates in 2021 to 2022, at the same time Korea secures two decisive initial contracts, particularly in air defense with the KM-SAM in Saudi Arabia, for $3.5 billion. More broadly, the appeal of the Korean model is reflected in the growing demands of clients who make their agreements conditional on local transfers and co-production, a strategy that Seoul systematically offers. However, despite its successes, South Korea remains heavily dependent on external demand. Its spectacular success makes it just as vulnerable to global circumstances. A geopolitical shift, a cyclical drop in European demand, or a new wave of protectionism could shake this impressive structure. Moreover, the arms sector, like semiconductors or Korean shipbuilding, remains subject to the unpredictability of the markets, and above all, to the growing pressure from American, European, and also Chinese giants. South Korea's ability to maintain its technological lead while remaining flexible with transfers and agile in its industrial responses will therefore be the key to its survival as a new player in the arms market. Finally, the cynicism that characterizes Seoul's current success, its relative neutrality, and its lack of taboos regarding certain clients, could, in a context of political upheaval or wars between alliances, become a dangerous trap, especially in a context where the United States is seeking to ensure loyalty and control over its periphery. Seoul, remaining quite distant, not to say isolated at the edge of the Asian continent, brings us back to the eternal question of geography, resources, and control of flows, which you are well aware of on this channel. You see, in less than a decade, South Korea has transformed its defense industry into a tool of power and influence with formidable effectiveness, gradually imposing its standards where the former players once reigned unchallenged. This success is entirely due to a cold reading of national interests, a keen sense of realpolitik and innovation. The speed in decision-making in industrial packages prioritizes customer satisfaction above all other considerations. South Korean armored vehicles now roll on Polish soil. FA-50s patrol the skies over Kuala Lumpur and Manila, and Seoul's logistics are forging new chains of economic allegiance in Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Europe, and beyond. And Korea is not alone. By 2030, it could be limited by other middle powers. I'm thinking of Turkey, Brazil, and also the United Arab Emirates, which are having more and more impact on the arms market. Nevertheless, a model is emerging whose sustainability will depend on its ability to withstand the next shock, that of an unstable world order, where power is never guaranteed and where clear-sightedness without emotion is commonplace. Also, remember to like the video, subscribe, and share it with others to support the channel. I want to stress this because the algorithm changes often, and your support is vital to continue, especially since some subscribers don't even receive our notifications. Finally, a huge thank you to all the YouTube members and financial supporters of the channel. It's thanks to you that we can continue producing these videos independently about geopolitical affairs since 2018. Thanks everyone, this was Quentin for Terra Bellum. See you next time.